Biidaabinokwe and Anishinaabe, Maingam Dodam, Saugeen Ojibway Nation. My name, given to me in English, is Jessica Kijik Martin. I am Wolf Clan and from these territories to which the Saugeen Ojibway belong.
Bonjour Kinawia, Waasekom Duo, Jiken Dodem, Shtabeus Nidal, Saugeen Ojibway. My English name is Edward, or some people know me as Eli. My Anishinaabe name is Waasekom, and it has to do with lightning. My clan is Turtle, and I'm from Saugeen as well as Kettle and Stony Point. I always usually say that I'm from the southeastern shores of our ancestor Lake Huron. I just wanted to say English to everybody who's here. We have a good group so far, and one of the things right away what we noticed is that we wanted to change the space a little bit, change the energy up a little bit, because we're hoping to impart with you something that maybe you'll take with you on your journey to understand and put into practice what is it, this free, prior, and informed consent. So in that way, this space that we're creating is as safe as we make it here now. And we're going to be asking you to extend yourselves here, be as present as you can for the short time that we have together. And in that way, it's a brave space, because we're trying something that maybe we don't know a little bit, we might not be sure of. But together, Jessica and I worked hard to bring this to you in a good way, and so we ask that you be here as much as you can, and hopefully leave with something useful for your lives and for the lives of your communities and those that you love.
If you need to go to the washroom, we'll release you.
So close the doors, lock them.
Don't want to shut the doors then?
Well, we wanted it was really hot in here the last session, so
Yeah.
we should keep them open. Miigwech to the Saugeen Ojibway Nation Joint Council, the Joint Chiefs and Councils, and the Planning Committee and the Environment Office for putting on this amazing event. It's very significant for our territory, and when I worked for the Environment Office as the nuclear file coordinator, it was something that was sort of just a vision at the time, and there were a lot of other community activities happening that needed our focus, and so finally the Environment Office hired April Thompson to do the event planning, so she did an amazing job along with her team. I'll be just referring to my notes here just to make sure I'm still on track, but I think we're up next.
Oh, okay. So with that, we have to acknowledge where we are right now, which is our home territory of the Saugeen Ojibway Nation. And as well, part of our presentation has to do with the water, and that's why we have the water here. So we've been referring to Lake Huron as our ancestor for a while now, because we've been treating the water as if it has a stake in everything that we do. And as Anishinaabe people, we're responsible for certain parts of creation, and it's the way that we've been governed. So the way that we're sitting today is the way that we've been given as Anishinaabe. So we wanted to start off this way, and we didn't talk about this, but I really feel like it's important to acknowledge that we're all still learning. We came here to find good information and to find what are the steps that we need to take. For Anishinaabe, it could be the journey of sovereignty. For maybe non-Anishinaabe, it would be how do we respect Indigenous rights, how do we incorporate the desire of First Nations people to be involved in decision making. So with this acknowledgement of learning being centered here on the land, this territory, this water, I wanted to offer everybody a chance to hold some tobacco while we're here, because we're making an inquiry that tells us, or that's asking to find a good way forward, together. Quinn, would you pass this out? And just hang on to it while we talk, and we'll come and pick it up after. And just in your left hand, if you don't know, just hold on to the tobacco. And we'll collect it up, and we'll make sure it's put out in a good way. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. Oh, right. So I mentioned Lake Huron because this morning, all across the Great Lakes system and beyond, there was over 400 groups this morning that met at sunrise, and we were just down by the water here to say thank you to the water, to answer this call that went out to continue our relationship with this ancestor. And all across the Great Lakes system, and like I said, beyond, people were there together. And in this way, with this approach that we're sharing with you, we have to recognize that whatever it is that we're looking at in the center place here, we're all sitting, in different sides of the same thing. So today we're putting water in the center as it applies to free, prior, and informed consent, but it could be anything. It could be this process of free, prior, and informed consent. And everybody here has a very important perspective that they can all contribute. So when we're working with the water, we know that the water responds to our inquiry. We know that there's a guiding force that's been here for us as Anishinaabe people for a long time. And in picking up our responsibilities, coming to this place where we're in control of our own destinies, we also recognize that there's something else here that's helping us today.
We also wanted to acknowledge the Creator, the sacred fire and sacred items, the ancestors that are here with us today, the leadership, the community, our allies, our friends, our co-workers, and those yet to come. Over the last several years, I've been on a personal learning journey to understand my culture and heritage. I am the granddaughter of 3 residential school survivors and a descendant of survivors of colonization. I don't know, I'm not fluent in my language and culture, and they were not always readily accessible to me. Even now, they're not readily accessible to me as much as they once were for our ancestors. I'm so grateful for all of those that have come before that have brought forward our culture and our language and teaching despite the onslaught of colonization and oppression that we faced. So I went from doing my Bachelor's of Education or Bachelor's of Arts at U of T. I've done a Master's in Education, and in that Master's I focused on my work as the Nuclear File Coordinator from 2015 to just last year, and focused on my personal experience learning about the nuclear issues happening in our territory and how my own learning journey can help me to assist in the development of the Anishinaabe King, Anishinaabe and Waywin, Anishinaabe Napanagewin community process that our people from Saugeen and Nawash have been involved in over the last several years in terms of the free, prior, and informed consent process to make decisions on the proposed GGR for our territory. I'm also now doing my Ph.D. and I would like to focus on Indigenous knowledge and particularly the water. I have been very involved with water work in coming to know my language and culture and teachings, coming to know my responsibilities and my role as Biidaabinokwe, something that I take very seriously. And in that role within my community, being someone who listens to the water and that can bring forward and advocate for the water, for its protection, and for its life-giving ways for future generations. So I've been also very inspired by the water walk movement, especially grandmother Josephine, who's done so much work, and she's in my thoughts today especially, and this morning in our beautiful water ceremony, as well as the other grandmothers and elders and water walkers and community members that have been involved in this movement. Been very inspired by all of them, especially this one here as well. I'm very happy to be partnering with him on this journey that we've started together. And that work has inspired me to work and be committed to the water in my education. And so I've made the space and done, I think, trying to live the way that I've been taught in order to enact my role and responsibilities as Biidaabinokwe.
So our work today is based on a simple understanding that we as a sovereign people, underneath all the layers of colonialism and process and law, there's a simple assertion that we are sovereign. And one day we're going to get there. And sometimes in these processes we kind of lose sight of that vision, the possibility that, and the line of questioning, the kind of inquiry that's required to see that we're going to get there. We're going to get to this place where who we are as decision makers, that will be respected one day. That the things that we are responsible for, they will be respected. That we'll be given the space and the time to properly consult with not only our own people in a setting such as this, but also uphold our responsibilities that we have. So we've been engaged with the nuclear issue in our territory that everybody knows quite a bit about by now for a little while. And the approach that we've taken is by recognizing that life that's inside this water. And so I just wanted to share with you a little bit about this blanket here. And if you can look at it closely, it's actually starting to get a little bit discolored because this has been working. And it's taken me a couple of years to understand how to open up a space and hold enough space for enough voices, like the voices of a nation, to be present, to be valued, to be honored, to be properly heard. And we learn a lot from the water because we know that our thoughts and what we feel impacts the water on a molecular level. Our thoughts restructurize water, depending on how we're feeling, depending on what we're thinking. And it's the same with human beings, of course, because we're all made out of water. So if we come into this space and it's a highly political conversation, we're all going to get stuck up here. As Anishinaabe, we've been given, and that's just one example, because there's many other reasons why we have a hard time coming together to make a decision. Sometimes it's even just to have a good, wholesome conversation where we all leave feeling good. We all leave feeling like we can do something about it. As Anishinaabe, we've been given the clan system. And how we're sitting right now, we're kind of sitting in that way. Each part of our nation has a responsibility to take care of itself. And as it fulfills that responsibility, we take care of one another, we take care of the whole. So this is part of the work as well that we've been engaged with, to come to a space where the approaches from a community-based point of view become the priority. They become a part of coming back together. We're going to restore our families, our community, and then we can look beyond. One of the biggest challenges on this journey with the clan system is a fear that we all kind of have of moving forward. Something might come in and change everything, and we've been through that. It's in our blood to feel that, to know that. So, and another big thing that is experienced in this space is not being able to belong. Just the simple, in a community, just the simplest thing of belonging. So the way forward that I see is to create a space like this, right? Where we don't know where everybody's at right now. And there could be a single mother. There could be somebody who's recently coming off of drugs, or somebody who struggles with addiction, any kind of addiction. Oftentimes in communities, young people have a hard time being heard. So in this space of the clans, that's where everybody's voice counts. Everybody's voice matters. And it becomes a part of building consensus. And like I said, it's working. We're figuring out all the little ways that people have a hard time with engaging with a particular subject matter. Why is it that they don't come, they don't show up? And oftentimes, when we get involved with these processes, we forget about the very simple and fundamental work of building community. And I would say that that's a priority, the top priority. Because no matter what we decide, if we all agree, or at least we find a consensus, whether that's wrong or right, it'll be the right decision because we all made it together. So to me, that's the definition of consent, free prior informed consent. Is that we all know that together in this time right now, we did something that matters. Do you want to pass out some water? Just so just really quickly, in this space, we're often wondering, what can everybody bring? Because we all have gifts, we all have something to contribute. And oftentimes, just put it in the other bowl. Together we have a lot. If we work together, if we all brought something, if everybody brought a little bit of something, this whole blanket would be full. If everybody brought a little gift, we would have a really beautiful giveaway at the end. You know, and you'd get something back in return. So that's another thing I just wanted to share with you.
Anishinaabe have been practicing Biidaabinokwe our decision-making practices, which also include free, prior, and informed consent since time immemorial. There's no doubt that colonization had a tremendous destructive impact on our decision-making processes. But like Waasekom and I have been talking about today is, you know, this is our way. This is an Anishinaabe way. We need to start doing things in our way, and that's why we felt it important to bring forward this discussion in this type of conference and venue and space. We need to find our way to bring our practices back in meaningful ways for us today. So we started a process earlier in the spring, which is called Ganon Negona Zagigan, which means the lake is speaking to us. And the reason we did that was because the lake spoke to us and made a call to us to bring forward a message to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. We worked through ceremonies leading up to that hearing, And at that hearing, at the end of May, we sat basically like this, and there was a chair here, and we made this chair available for Biidaabinokwe, the water spirit, to be present with us, so that the commissioners who are all sitting up here would see that we need to make a space and we need to have a voice for the water in those type of decision-making processes when they're considering decisions that will impact our territory, like the one they were proposing. Bruce Power was proposing to refurbish its reactors, which would bring the life of that facility, extend the life of the facility in our territory for another 50 years or so. And so we felt it very important to bring that message forward, and created a Facebook page, and even created a petition. We had over 12,000 signatures on that petition. We are also advocating for free, prior, and informed consent of our people on those types of major projects as well.
One of the reasons why we're talking about this voice for water in a decision-making process, it goes back to our understanding of, why do we have the rights that we have? Why do these rights need to be respected? Why should any proponent, why should any government respect our rights? And oftentimes there's no understanding of why. They're just bound by law. The duty to consult is triggered, and then it becomes a checkbox. It becomes a quick process. But if there was enough space there, we could say and share. Oh, did everybody get it? So the way that, so we're talking about these responsibilities, and in legislation, in policy, laws, they don't say responsibility, they say special relationship. Like the language around this is very, it's almost like we're all sitting and having a kumbaya, but really we're having an important conversation about, this is a sacred responsibility that we have to uphold who we are. So from that responsibility that we were given to by the Creator, this is how we're made. From there, that flows our title. And from that title, as original caretakers of this land, flows our rights. Rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, rights that are also outlined in the treaties. But that flows out, that's a result. But where that comes from is going back to this connection with the water. This goes back to the land. It goes back to the beings that we share this place with. So we're asking for a process where we have the time, space, and resources to properly consult with this. This is the work. Because in this work, it requires everybody to contribute something, to come back together, right? So we can all collectively understand what's here. This all might look, if some people aren't used to this, it might look foreign, And this is where we're all at as a nation. Everywhere I go, we're just now starting to be okay with this, recognizing that this is who we are. This is who we've always been. And we're in a time of, immense changes in climate. Things are getting real really fast. So, it makes sense why we're here, that we come back to petition not only the water, but the animals, the forests, whatever project is occurring, we need to consult with our elders. They need to be there to be a part of, to help us to understand what's going to happen to the land if we do this. We need to be there, those women need to be there to tell you what's going to happen to the water when you do this. Right? And right now we don't have a process that addresses that. We can do the survey and get a sense of what people think, but where's that heart in that? Where's the thought of this young person? And the ones who's not here. What about the villages that used to be there and the people who survived and are now over here? What about those ancestors that are buried? You know, our process needs to reflect all of those things. And that's why the proponent, the crown, needs to respect that right, because it flows from a very important place.
This feather, I found this feather and an elder told me I could keep it in Dene territory when I was there last year for a short time at Dichinta in a course called Indigenous Self-Determination, and so this feather reminds me about that concept. And Glenn Coulthard and Leanne Biidaabinokwe Simpson were the professors in that course, and Leanne was talking about stories, and at the time I was thinking a lot about free, prior, and informed consent. And something she said really clicked with me, and I talked to her about it afterward, in terms of how do we know if we've made a good decision? We can never really know that until after we've made the decision and the whole issue plays out. And so, for example, if we do our process and our protocols to take from the land a plant, for example, for medicine, we offer tobacco, we do it in our good way, in the best way that we can. How that medicine will impact you will be dependent upon if you went through a good process. That will determine if it was a good decision or not. Same thing with the water. If we're taking it as a resource, once we do that, depending on the outcome, will let us know if that was a good decision or not. And so, based on that, I continue to think about that. And so that's where spirit comes in, and why spirituality for our people plays such an important part, because no one can predict what will happen after a decision is made. As many, tests we can do, and science, and our ancestors have provided for us the customs and traditions and practices, because those are our instructions to do things in a good way. And if we don't follow those instructions, we're not sure as Anishinaabe people if we're making good decisions or not. And so this requires us connecting with our spirit. It requires the highest morale and decision-making processes, especially when we're talking about decisions that are going to impact our people and the earth and the water for thousands to 100,000s to a million years. And so that was really something I wanted to share with everyone in terms of what I've been thinking on that, and how important these customs are for our people.
I often wonder sometimes, when the 400 series highway, I was like, I wonder if Native people were actually consulted, really a part of the would that nightmare even be there? I wonder stuff like that, because with this relationship, it's based on sustenance, it's based on kinship, it's based on survival, and there's a knowledge of the land. There's a knowledge there. The earth tells you something. If you know how to read that, you won't make big mistakes like the 400 series. It's a traffic nightmare every day. And if our people were, and it's not to say that, and I think that's what you were kind of getting at. It's we need to have that integrity in our processes. We need to incorporate all parts of creation. In our creation story, we were the last ones to be lowered here. We were the last ones. Every other part of creation was here before we even got here. And that made us a very humble people at one time. And like Jess was saying, our ancestors always thought ahead. They always thought ahead for us. And I would say they even thought about this time now. And they wondered what kind of decisions we would make. What kind of ancestors are we going to be? You know, and it's not to say that development shouldn't happen or it can't happen, or that we all need to get up in arms about it. But we need to do it in a way that is conducive for the earth. When you look, when I paddled the Great Lakes last year, I paddled through some very traumatic things that impacted my mind, my body, my emotions, and in a way that I never experienced before. It was like grief. Like, you know, when you lose somebody really close and you just have that hurt, that's what I experienced. Not all of it, but some parts, like Lake Erie, for example. There's over 24 million people that rely on the Great Lakes every single day for drinking water. Lake Erie, 2 months to 3 months out of the year, becomes so impaired that it's not able to provide life to not only us as humans, but to everything else. When I paddled through, there was a fracking spill that got into the lake and it killed, I think, 60,000 fish. You know, and I bring this up because they're the ones that are paying for the poor mistakes. Most decision makers aren't thinking like this. They're thinking about economic benefit, quarterly gains. You know, they're not thinking about the long-term impacts. They're not thinking about what might happen. And I guess that's the big encouragement here is we need to think about that very carefully as we move forward. And everybody's voice, the community's voice, that process has to be community-driven. And we have something, you know, as Anishinaabe to rely on. Because our people have been through a lot of like heavy things throughout their, you know, throughout time. And even before that, we have stories about the animals were so upset with us that they all gathered like this and they started to have a council. They decided, you know what, we're going to leave them. They lost their way. We don't want anything to do with these humans anymore. And they were all going to leave and just leave us to die. You know, and it was the bear actually that stood up and said, I can't leave my brother behind. He's so pitiful, you know, and he's hurting everything, but I can't leave him. I'm going to stay. And he stood up. And those other animals started to think about it. And some of them did leave, but a lot of them stayed because of that bear who stood up for us. And in our clan teachings, and in that traditional governance way, we recognize that all of the things that we've been given come from the earth and they come from learning from the animals. A lot of our medicines come from that place, right? And that's, so we're in a time as well where are we thinking about those animals who stood up for us, right? They're worried about their children and their children's children, their futures. You know, with large-scale projects like the Trans Mountain, the Ring of Fire, the Bruce, like, we have to think of them because they gave us something that we can rely on to make good decisions. And they're in need too right now. You know, their homes, their lives are being destroyed. You know, what happened to them happened to us. You know, and we still remember that as Anishinaabe, and that's why we have a hard time sometimes. But there is a way to have that community-driven process, and it's here. It's here in every single person. And it starts here with the individual, of course, but we're all getting to this place where we can have these community-minded discussions and have it safe, you know, have it good. And that's where we got to start. So I just wanted to say Chini Gledge from myself for being here, being a part of this conversation. And yeah, thank you for listening.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to Waasekom, and I encourage everyone to applaud him or shake his hand for all of the, he commits his whole life to this work and sacrifices a lot, him and others that his team. And so I really find him to be an inspiration and someone who sacrifices and commits a lot to this work. So thank you very much.
I don't know what time, where we at? Because we have time to talk. Because typically, the way, we just wanted to introduce everybody to this, because this feels different, you know, and we can go far in this. It's working. And I've spent 2 years trying to understand how to do this. And I didn't realize at first, like, holy man, you're getting into all the reasons why we've become divided. All those dynamics, the whole Indian accent, and it's so discouraging, you know, at first. But we're starting, you were at the clan gathering, you know, like we're really breaking through because we're thinking about who's coming to the door. We're thinking about all of our people. And in a nation setting, it shouldn't be everybody fighting to get to the top, you know, and who's the best at, you know, convincing the people of something. It should be, there should be enough space for everybody, right? And our people, when they feel that, and they know that they're actually going to be heard, and that they're valuable, they'll come right over, you know, and they'll bring something, they'll bring their family, you know, and we gotta think about those, think about them, eh? So, typically how it works is each clan has an opportunity, you know, that center place, what we're discussing, each clan has an ability to just put something out there. And eventually they go away with themselves and they have a discussion. And then one person is, you know, put up to just repeat back what the clan said. And that's the first round. That's just the first, you know, there's sometimes the decision comes out that we just need more time. And everybody can agree that, hey, we have to go and talk to these people that maybe aren't here right now. Their voice matters, so we got to take a little bit more time. And that's a good decision, you know, because we're on this learning journey and we're trying to make the best decision possible. So this wasn't a clan teaching by any means, and there's some really awesome people I want to mention, like Gordon Wendevens, Willie Trudeau, Biidaabinokwe, Peter Atkinson. There's all these, and definitely Josephine Mandaman. She's been carrying this work, the clans, the water, and they just get up and do it, you know. And all these teachers, they're really, and a lot of them are getting a lot older, and you're wondering who's going to pick up our nation, who's going to carry our nation, right? And at first it seems heavy, but when everybody picks up a little bit and contributes a little bit, it's really light. And it's nice. And we don't visit enough either. We don't just take time to visit. Sometimes when that happens, we can actually get the most done. So it's usually really laid back, you know, and it's nice. So I just wanted to say that much. How did you say that?
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Too hot in here?
Is it still too hot?
It's not the conversation. It's really, really helpful to hear that from you two, because we both, we know that it takes a lot of commitment to do what you do. And, it's very much appreciated. So it's very much, no one ever says thank you very much.
So there's no questions, seriously?
Covered.
No, we felt like an hour was not enough time. Because we had to keep on our little, we worked hard to try to keep it in do you want to help? Can you go around?
How can anybody help support
With
the work, you know, having water be part of the conversation of free and fire point of sound?
Oh, that's a really awesome question. The relationship's important, the continuation, bringing other people to that awareness, you know, but also shifting our thought, you know, because it's really human-centered.
Yeah.
But the reason why we have the rights that we have is because we're the original stewards of the land. So we have to shift our thinking instead of really human-centered to the water and ask really, each and every one of us could be asking that question. Like in our presentation to the CNSC, we asked how does Lake Huron perceive the Bruce Power, like Bruce Nuclear Generating Station? You know, no one's thinking about that. How would it feel if you were Lake Huron to be just could siphon off every, like so much out of your body every couple of seconds? How does that feel? What is that experience like? And I know from experience being on the canoe and doing that work, that once you work with that feeling, there's a lot of insight there. And I can't always, like for myself, it's just a really personal thing, but I know that people that share that connection, there's really good insight, and that's, I think, where our knowledge comes from. And how our knowledge evolves is from that insight and that connection. So I would encourage people to have, if you don't spend a lot of time thinking about that, to start, and also how to apply that into these processes, how to ask those kind of questions, because it also throws off proponents. You kind of have a little something to work with, right? And they're saying, how the heck do you know that? How do you, they wonder, because if we're just becoming complacent in the process, we're still fighting, we're still fighting to have ourselves recognized as decision makers.
I gotta say, this morning, after our ceremony, or after my door handle got all screwed up, and I was driving around holding my door, trying to find the ceremony, and I took my tools out of my truck. And so we had the ceremony, and then these workers were coming in as it was happening, and after I'm like, one of those guys has a screwdriver, I'm gonna go ask, and everybody left, and I went over to ask for a screwdriver, and one of the fellows from the earth boring company, came over to talk to me while I was working on my truck, to talk about like what were you guys doing, and then we ended up having a 15-minute conversation about water and water rights because he saw us on the shoreline, and he wanted to know what and why, and I get to talk to somebody about what we're doing here because we were visually being seen, and having an open dialogue. It was a good thing, even though he was boring into the earth. Now he's got more to think about when he's doing that job.
And I think we purposely didn't really talk about what people outside of the nation can do. We wanted to really focus on internally within the nation, but I think those outside of the nation should be pushing, provincial and federal governments to respect Indigenous people's authority in decision making on these projects. But then as individuals, whether you're out of the nation or within the nation, should all be, and I talked about my learning journey because I think most people in this room are on their own learning journeys, just to continue and pursue that. I think that makes a huge difference in how you feed into the process.
I really like the way you said that, because that's what we found with the clans. There's a lot of allies that are like, well, we want to be in there, we're like, oh, we're sorry, we don't give up clans to non-native people. But, and we thought about this, like, we're just putting this back together,
Yeah.
right? So if you're a non-native person and you're down with natives, and you're like, you can appreciate what we're doing, because it's like when we are unified, like we're strong. Like some of the things that Anishinaabe people have been able to do because they got it together, and sometimes it's really last minute. That's how we are, but we get it together. Like that is meaningful, and that's important. And so non-native people being on the outset like, oh, I don't have a place. Well, your place is right where you are. And sometimes it might be like the big bad wolf might be watching, right, and wants to come and blow down this house that we're just rebuilding. So come and tell us.
Yeah.
Come and tell us what's up, right? I'm just putting it in like plain simple language, because like I don't I think it's so important that we rebuild this. It might not be clans, right? I'm just saying as Anishinaabe, that's what we were given. But to put unity, community, families, all of this, that's the word. And we need to protect that too. Protect the integrity of that, right? Because it's just coming back. So we've been working our healing journeys as people through intergenerational trauma and what have you, healing the self, family, community, nation, like that, right? So we're coming, the conversations we're having is about these next steps. At the same time, we're talking about making major decisions about our territories, right? Yeah. So, thanks for sharing that, Jess.
I just think that we're all a part of this water that we try to protect, and us all being part of the water, we need to respect each other at a chief and council level, community level, families, aunties, uncles, children. And once we have that respect in our communities and we respect each other as a whole, then that's part of that water that we share. And yeah, I just think it really needs to start there in our communities, and then it'll make us stronger. We talk about this unity about water, and then we can branch out.
Yeah.
But until we have that in our communities, we're going to struggle. So just making sure that, we can all look at each other and acknowledge each other at the same levels. It's not about government, it's not about, because in the end, we're only people. We all have that water, so it's maybe respect that. So if we respect that water, then we'll respect each other.
Yeah, and sometimes those, that division is caused by, we try to wear our hats into things where, when we're coming into a community space, sometimes it's just enough just to take the hat off or take the coat off, just come in as who you are. Because in that space, everybody's equal and there's no preconceived notions or anything. We're just trying to take care of us as a community, Because you're right, the water does unify us. It's actually probably one of the most single unifying things common to everybody, right? So when we have that vision, right, we can go towards that. And oftentimes, why we can't see this because we're doing our job. We're trying to raise kids, or we're trying to, finish school or something, But in order to make a good decision, we gotta kind of have a clear vision, eh?
I guess I'd like to make a statement as we pretty well all gathered to leave here. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'll try to stand up. I did the original Voices for Water with grades 4 and 5. So sometimes we have to figure out what age we are under 10 to go and have fun in life. But with Chesley, the Aboriginal Voices, we're talking to these children. We are all children of the Creator. And through all my studies about water, they say for every ache or pain we have, we should drink more water. A pain is an indication we should have more water. It dilutes a lot of stuff within our bodies. So I'd ask those students, grade 4 and 5, what they had for breakfast this morning. Some would say coffee, tea, milk, juice. I said, how would you like to shower the outside of your body with all those products? So we have so many sugared up people, we have so much illness within our community, and cancer, and it's affecting everything. So I said to the children, well, first thing in the morning I'd like you to do, before you have anything else, shower the inside of the body, because everybody showers the outside of the body. So I just like to leave you with that little message, that you go home and ask your children, like the same question I've just asked you, because we are all children of the Creator.
Good question.
I just have a question about your, is that separate from your council? Or how does that
So in the practice, what we're doing, like the practice of it right now, we have these grandmothers that meet, and we've asked them questions. And so and one of those, that's one of the questions, because we don't want, nobody's making any decisions. We just have to find a good way to do things that doesn't further entrench the vision, right? Because that's oftentimes what happens. And our chief and councils, our health directors, they're all people too. They're all community members at the end of the day. So we got to find that way how we, and I think that's part of it, is to be able to take off that role for a little bit and for a community to recognize like, hey, this guy's a guy, he's one of us, you know, instead of that, because that's what like the Indian Act was designed to do. So we have to be able to see beyond that and just put it in the past. Like we might have to still administer a community this way, and the operation might need to be Western at this time, but the way that we come together, the way that we make decisions doesn't have to be. Right? And I think it unburdens also the chief and council from having to be in this space where they don't hear from everybody all the time because of that division, and then they're stuck trying to make the best use of opinion that they have. You know, like I think it helps to open that up. But it's based like these 7 clans are also the 7 grandfather teachings, right? And if we make space for that, like I say, whatever decision, like if it's, do we keep chief and council separate, or do they stay? If this was why we met, whatever decision we made from here would be the right one. You know, it might be that we're gonna keep it separate for now until we can find a good way to bring them in. You know,
Chief and council are only a title. We collectively we work together as one body. We make a decision collectively, and our voice from the council in an ideal situation is only a reflection of what the community is saying. That's how I look at it, and that's how we approach it. And we support the work that you do because we know that in the Western world we get too caught up in how our decision-making process should be. Our decision process should be holistic. That's what we're doing.
I'm going to suggest that ways that you can help or start is to think about feeling jurisdiction, feeling who you are. Those little things that one can do is wherever you come across water in your travels, go to that water and put a little bit of tobacco down. Even if there's people standing around. I've stopped at many places in my travels and I just stopped and put a little bit of tobacco into the water. And sometimes people would say, you know, or look at me like that and say, what's that guy doing? And or even along Sabo Beach, our area, you know, a whole bunch of people there in the summertime. And they look, you know, they go like this. It's almost like they're looking around a tree saying, what's that Indian guy doing? You know, don't be afraid to do that, because that is empowering yourself. You're feeling that. Eventually that feeling is going to get stronger and stronger. So wherever you go, don't hesitate to stop and put a little bit of tobacco into the water. Even if there's people standing by there. You know, let them watch you. So they need to see that. And sometimes they don't see where we're trying to hide. And maybe that's our nature. We're trying to hide, you know, our ceremonies. We're trying to hide what we're doing. We don't want to see anybody, so they put their tobacco down or something like that. You know, don't be afraid to do that out in the open, because that's your right to do that. We were given that right to use that tobacco. And when we use that tobacco, we're doing a number of things. Not only giving thanks for that water, we're giving thanks for who we are. There's a number of things that we can do. And maybe even your children. Sometimes you watch the little ones, the really small ones. They'll go into the water. They don't care if people are watching them. They'll go into the water and they'll put tobacco into the water. And some of those mothers who have taught them to do that, that's great, because those little ones are naturally going to feel that jurisdiction, feel that ownership, feel who we are. Once you start feeling that, and it takes time sometimes to do that. Once you feel that, you feel stronger and stronger inside of you. And, so sometimes that embarrassment perhaps is what keeps us from feeling things as a people and as things that we should be doing.
Quinn, did you want to have that final word?
That's a good final answer.
Yeah, just grateful for all that you are doing. All that you have done, continue to do. But I think it's really cool, you know. My previous presentations, they're like PowerPoint presentations, right? And you come here and it's just a completely different space. And it just transformed the way that we were learning. Because we were learning, I think we were learning from each other here. I think that was really powerful. You said something too, is about our relations, right? Our relations to the land, our relationship to the land, the animals, and the spirit. You know, when making decisions, and that's very important. And you know, this process here, I think, is really, really important because this thing that I've come to know and understand is I think you said it. The second was. Eventually, Kimingo na that we not doing it. You know, that the Creator gave us sovereignty, the sovereignty to govern ourselves, and that's a responsibility that we have, right? Like you said, those original instructions. You know, and this process includes everybody, right? So all of our people. So when we go forward, someone else told me there's like. You know, the only way forward to go is to go together, right? So see ourselves in this place. So you know, I think it's really important for people to share that. I just wanted to express my gratitude. Beautiful.
Thank you for coming.